Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Before we begin, yesterday when I talked about the denizens of Jabba's palace, I forgot to mention one extremely important character, or important in the minds of many fans, and that is Salacious B. Crumb, Jabba's twisted court jester, the little laughing little lizard creature that sits on his tail. That is a character that is loved by many Star Wars fans, and a great inclusion to Jabba's palace as this nasty little, sadistic little twerp who seems to be quite a sadist and enjoy laughing at others' pain. So, shout out to him, Salacious B. Crumb. Today, I'd like to speculate on The Mandalorian, as well as the Cassian Andor show, which currently has no name, and Kenobi. So, usually on Fridays, I've been speculating about the rise of Skywalker. And that's all fine and good, but what about the other products that are forthcoming? Let us begin with The Mandalorian. Now, with The Mandalorian, I'm not too worried about spoilers or about learning too much. I think that this is the kind of product that is not necessarily going to drop any major surprises on us. I'm sure there will be some, but I don't think it's going to be like the rise of Skywalker in the sense that this is a big deal as far as you don't want to know what's going to happen because that would take away the fun of it. And I'm sure that some of you out there don't want to know anything about The Mandalorian to be surprised, sure. But for myself personally, I'm not so worried about spoilers or about learning too much. So let's talk about it. The story, as you know, maybe I've got the timeline wrong, so I'm not going to throw out any years specifically. But the show takes place after Return of the Jedi. In fact, not very long after Return of the Jedi. A time period that we do not really know much about. I know that, Chuck Wendig wrote his Aftermath trilogy, but I'm going to be very frank with you. I do not believe that they're going to bother to really pay much attention to what he wrote in the book. Now, I don't think he wrote enough there that would contradict anything that happens in The Mandalorian. In the Mandalorian series, I don't think there's going to be that sense of, oh, we got to abide by what's in the Aftermath trilogy. I just don't think that they really care, or that it really matters. And I'm not saying that canon doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's in a book that only some fans have read. The Mandalorian is a show that lots more people are going to be watching than people reading the books. So I don't think they're going to pay too much attention to continuity there. Or if they really need to. I have not read the trilogy. I'm not really interested in what's there. But I think because this is a visual medium with the streaming shows, I think those are going to be more important than what's in the books. That being said, so The Mandalorian is set kind of on the lawless frontier. Very much the Dollars trilogy, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. With Clint Eastwood, the very kind of fringes of society. We know that the Mandalorian inhabits a world that is very lawless, that is very cutthroat. Now, one of the things that I think we will learn is more about what happened to the Mandalorians. The Mandalorians are a warrior race in Star Wars, a warrior culture. They're human, mostly. Now, we know that the Mandalorians, at least as of what we're told in Star Wars Rebels, fought against the Empire during those years. But we don't know what's happened to them since. Maybe the Mandalorian will shed light on that. Now, as for the Mandalorian, the main character himself, we don't know if he has a name. I don't know if we're ever going to see him. I assume we are. I assume you wouldn't hire Pedro Pascal if he was just going to wear a helmet the whole time. And I'm sure we'll learn more about him specifically, but he is working as a bounty hunter, going around capturing people who have bounties on their heads. And he probably works for a bunch of folks, some of whom may be good, and I say that very loosely, and some who may be more on the evil side. It would seem, at least from the trailer, or more of a teaser it really was, that he's working for both Carl Weathers' character and working for Werner Herzog's character. And I believe I've heard that Werner Herzog is playing a former Imperial. So, not exactly the best person to be working for. Kind of an Imperial who's on the run from the law. You know, this is set during a time period when I don't think the New Republic has firmly established its foothold in the galaxy, or firmly established control, and you probably have lots of Imperial officers hiding out, kind of like a lot of the Nazis who escaped to South America after the World War II. So you've got this, you've got, I have not done a lot of research on the Mandalorian because I don't want to know the characters' names. I kind of want to, I mean, not that I don't want to know anything about the characters, but I kind of want to. Now, I know that this may sound contradictory to what I said earlier, but I don't really care about learning about the story and what planets we're going to see and what events we're going to see. But as far as the characters, I'm funny about characters. I kind of like to meet the characters along with the audience, the general audience. So that may be the one exception. It looks like an interesting cast of characters. Some interesting talent behind it. Also, the IG droid, who looks like IG-88. If you recall, in The Empire Strikes Back, IG-88 was one of the bounty hunters who was called upon by Darth Vader to find the Millennium Falcon. He was the tall, skinny droid, and we see one that looks just like him in The Mandalorian. Now, I've learned a bit more about this character, but I don't want to share too much for those listening who may not want to know anything. He looks really cool. I think hopefully some of the technology employed, because Jon Favreau, who's the showrunner, has done The Jungle Book and The Lion King, the recent ones, and he's definitely on the cutting edge of technology. So it will be interesting to see what he is able to create for the show. Now, as far as what we're going to see, I don't know if we're going to see any familiar characters. The question with any new Star Wars product, particularly of a visual medium, in a visual medium, a lot of fans immediately say, ooh, can we see this character? Can we see this character? Can we see this character? Familiar characters that we already know. I don't know if we will. I think it's going to be fun to expand the universe without necessarily needing to hinge on any familiar faces. Now, will Boba Fett appear? Well, as far as we know, Boba Fett was eaten by the Sarlacc. And we do not really know, other than a vague reference to his armor in the Aftermath trilogy, which, yet again, I've not read. We don't know if Boba Fett survived. I wouldn't really care to see him, but if he shows up, great. I don't think we're going to see Darth Vader. I don't think we're going to see Luke. I don't think we're going to see any of those characters. This, I think, is going to be a story all on its own. So that's really all I want to really say about The Mandalorian. Other than I'm excited, I'm signing up, I'm pleased with the trailer, or teaser, I should say. And I really like the look of what they're going for. Now let's talk really quick about the Cassian Andor series. Cassian Andor was a character from Rogue One. He was the character played by the Latino actor. Who was like sort of the second main character of Rogue One. Diego Luna is the actor. He's returning, as well as Alan Tudyk, who was going to play K2SO again. I love K2SO. He is a great character. And I'm so glad that we live in an age where the technology exists that even a streaming series could have a motion capture droid. They're going to be doing that. I think they're going to be doing a bit of that as well in The Mandalorian with the motion capture. Or should I say performance capture. Though I don't think it's performance capture with K2SO because he has no facial expressions. But it'll be great to have those two return. This will be kind of the story of what they did before the events of Rogue One. Yet again, another Latino lead character. I thought, actor. That's kind of cool. Pedro Pascal is playing the Mandalorian, and Diego Luna as Cassian. I like the fact that all of the modern franchises, or of a lot of modern movies, I should say, Star Wars seems to be where it's at when it comes to diversity on screen. Now, what I said earlier about familiar characters. Okay. In the Cassian Andor series, which currently has no title, it would make sense to see Saw Gerrera again, played by the incomparable Forrest Whitaker. That would make sense because he was a rebel. We do not know the time period in which the Cassian Andor series takes place, other than it takes place before the events of Rogue One. On that same token, we do not know when Saw Gerrera split with the rebellion. In Rogue One, Mon Mothma says that they kind of had to split because Saw Gerrera became a bit too extreme. Now, in Star Wars Rebels, we see Saw Gerrera about, 2 years before the events of Rogue One. And he is split. He's already been split with the rebellion. But even if he's not a part of the rebellion, okay, let me back up. So in the Cassian Andor series, it could either take place when Saw is still a part of the rebellion, or still a part of the Rebel Alliance, or it could take place after he split with the Rebel Alliance. Either way, it would make sense to see him again. So that is a character that would make sense to see. It would also make sense to see, bear with me on this one, to see Enfys Nest. Enfys Nest, as we know, was an early rebel against the Empire. We don't know if she joined the Rebel Alliance. At least I don't know if she did. One of the new canon books, which I have not read, I cannot remember which one, as a meeting between Enfys Nest and Saw Gerrera. So there's a connection there. It would be cool to see Enfys Nest again. And the Cloud Riders, to see Erin Kellyman, the actress who played Enfys, return. She was great, by the way. I was so surprised. I had no idea going into Rogue One who was behind the mask of Enfys Nest. And to see this kid, it was like, wow, okay. And I like her very exotic look. But it would make sense to see her. So it would actually make a lot of sense to see these characters. Now, some people have asked, what about Ahsoka Tano? Ahsoka has only appeared in animation. She was Anakin Skywalker's Padawan during the Clone Wars. She left the Jedi Order after being framed for a bombing at the Jedi Temple. And later, she reappeared on Rebels about 4 years before the events of Rogue One. But we know that prior to that, she had been working as an operative for the Rebel Alliance, or at least an informant, known as Fulcrum, which actually the person who was codenamed Fulcrum changed from time to time. So it would make sense to see her. If she was working with the rebellion early on, and during those years, but we don't know how long she'd been doing it, then it would totally make sense to see her. Now, bringing an animated character to live action, it's been done with Saw Gerrera, but I think it could be possible to do it with Ahsoka. I think it would be very interesting to see. It would be interesting as to who and well, a talented actress. See the makeup and things like that. It would be very interesting. And the last person I want to say it would make sense to see is Bail Organa, played by Jimmy Smits, because we know that he, as a founding member of the Rebel Alliance, it would make sense for him to be there, as he was in Rogue One. So I think for sure, I'm going to make a bet. I'm going to give you a 99% chance that Bail Organa will appear in this series. And as a side note, could Leia appear as a little girl? or a teenage girl, depending on the time when it takes place. Yeah, I can see that, though, yet again, I think that they need to focus on expanding the palette, but it would not be out of the question to have her appear. So, those are my thoughts on some of the folks who might appear. We don't really have a lot of information to go off of what the storylines will concern. Whether or not it's going to feature Cassian meeting K2SO, which was done in the comic, so they may not want to retread that same material. Though, as I said, visual media, I think sometimes visual media trumps the written stuff in the Star Wars canon. I'm not saying that they're going to ignore their own canon, but if they do, I could see why. And the last thing to talk about, Kenobi. Actually, you know what? Let me back up really quick. Could we see Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian? I am going to say no. We don't know what happened to Ahsoka. We do know from Star Wars Rebels, and if you don't want to know what happens, you might want to mute this. Ahsoka was rescued by Ezra from her fight with Vader, but put back in that same moment. It's a little bit complicated with this world between worlds, which is a realm where time and space and the Force are all kind of weird. So anyhow, Vader did not kill Ahsoka. Ahsoka kind of went off and did her own thing for a couple of years, but then joined the fight, or worked more with the rebels, and did fight in the major conflicts. After the Battle of Endor, after the defeat of the Empire, Ezra, who had gone... Okay, let me back up yet again. I'm getting ahead of myself. In his final confrontation with Grand Admiral Thrawn, Ezra used his connection with animals in the Force to summon the space whales, and I forget what they were called, to basically take Grand Admiral Thrawn out of the fight, to take him away somewhere. Ezra got taken too. But it removed Thrawn from the fight, because I don't think the rebels would have been able to have a victory if Thrawn had still been around. At least that's my theory. Or it would have been more difficult. And it was already difficult. So Ezra was missing, and they don't know where he ended up going. The space whales, I forget what they're called, can travel through hyperspace. Yes, it sounds a little silly, but it worked within the context of the show. After the Battle of Endor, Sabine, who was another one of the Rebels members, went with Ahsoka to go and look for Ezra. That is the last we know where their story is headed. So we don't know if they found Ezra. We don't know if they've come back. We don't know any of that. There is one reason, though, why I think Ahsoka could appear in The Mandalorian. And that is because Jon Favreau's right-hand man in the making of this series is Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni was the bigwig basically in charge of Clone Wars and Rebels. He created Ahsoka. He has a deep connection to Ahsoka. He is why Ahsoka returned in Rebels. So I'm going to say that there is a chance Ahsoka could appear in The Mandalorian. Because Dave Filoni is involved, and he probably wants to bring his character wherever he goes in the Star Wars universe. Okay, let's jump to Kenobi really quick. We don't really know what's going to go on with Kenobi other than it takes place, and they've made this official. And if I got the number wrong, do forgive me. That it will take place 8 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith, putting it 11 years before the events of A New Hope. Obi-Wan, as we know, is on Tatooine, keeping an eye out on Luke from a distance. There has been a comic series telling a bit, or some comic books telling some of the events that have occurred with Obi-Wan on Tatooine, but it's very kind of sparse. It doesn't give us a lot. And yet again, visual medium might trump the written word, or the drawn word in case of comic books. So we don't really know what's going to be going on in this story. Now, immediately, as I said before, fans immediately said, "Oh, could we see this person? Could we see this person?" So let me just address that really quick. Some people say, could we see Darth Maul? The answer is no. No. Now, for those of you who did not know, Darth Maul returned in the Clone Wars. He was not dead. He wanted revenge on Kenobi. Things kind of backfired on him when the Emperor discovered he was still alive. Or should I say Palpatine at the time, he wasn't the Emperor. And sort of gave Maul a good talking to. Maul escaped the clutches of Palpatine and went off and did some stuff and returned in Star Wars Rebels and learned the location of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine. And he learned it about 2 years before the events of A New Hope. He went to Tatooine, and here's another spoiler, so mute if you don't want to hear it. Confronted Obi-Wan and was swiftly defeated by Obi-Wan. This happened 2 years before the events of A New Hope. That storyline is ended. It would not make sense for Maul to appear, or at least it would not make sense for him to appear and confront Kenobi, because he doesn't know where Kenobi is. Now, could he appear in other parts of the storyline that don't involve him ever learning where Kenobi is? Maybe. But as far as I'm aware, this series is going to be focused primarily on Obi-Wan. And it may not be a multi-season series. I'm not entirely sure about that, so don't quote me on that. So, no, I don't think we'd see Darth Maul, and I'm sure, and people have already suggested all kinds of convoluted ways to shoehorn him into the story. And no, I don't think we will. And also, I think there may be some fans who want them to basically redo the fight. The fight was very short and sweet and to the point. And at first I wasn't too fond of it, but then I was like, no, I think it worked. I think that people maybe wanted something a little bit bigger, more grand, more epic. And so maybe some fans are just saying, well, forget what happened in Rebels. Let's just basically redo it in a more epic way. Well, that's not a good idea, because then it means they don't care about their canon. And they've claimed that they do care about their canon, so let us just assume that that's not going to happen. And I think that I'm going to give it almost no chance that we will see Darth Maul. Yet again, could he appear in other scenes that involve him running his criminal operation or something like that? Sure, maybe. So no. The other person I don't think we're not going to see, sorry, double negative. The other person who I think we will not see is Darth Vader. There has been some speculation that Darth Vader might appear in this series and confront Obi-Wan. No. And a lot of this speculation is based on one line from Return of the Jedi. In Return of the Jedi, Vader says to Luke, when Luke tries to convert him to the light, he says, Obi-Wan once thought as you do. Now fans will say, well, we never saw that, so we need that explained. And that could be why Vader's in the series. My answer is no. And the reason is, it's one line. One line. A line that was written, furthermore, before the entire story had been fleshed out. Therefore, of course, there are going to be discrepancies. But that's the nature of an evolving storytelling. I do not believe that we need to see Vader to explain that line. I don't think everything in Star Wars needs to match up perfectly or be explained to us. So no, I do not believe that we're going to see Vader. Now, yet again, could we see Vader in other sequences in the series that do not involve meeting with Obi-Wan? Okay, maybe. Yet again, though, I think they really need to expand this world and not just keep throwing in the same people. Will we see young Luke? Luke would be 8 years old at the time. I suppose we could. Yet again, I mean, it's not like Obi-Wan's going to be coming over and saying, time for your lessons. Because we know that Uncle Owen and Aunt Rue were like, no, don't come around. We know from the comic, they don't know that Anakin is Darth Vader. So, let's be clear. When Uncle Owen says that that's what I'm afraid of, line, in A New Hope, he's not worried about Luke turning into Darth Vader. Because as far as we know in the canon, he doesn't know Anakin is Darth Vader. He thinks Anakin's dead. He thinks that Obi-Wan dragged Anakin off to war and it got Anakin killed. That's why they don't want Obi-Wan around. They're like, man, you messed up bad, big time. You know, you got my stepbrother killed. And if he had stayed here, he wouldn't have died. You know, so you're not coming around, Luke. That's their rationale. So this is a piece of the puzzle that maybe a lot of fans don't know. That's what Uncle Owen is referring to, at least as far as we understand it. Now, speaking of, can we see Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru? I think so. I've heard rumors that Joel Edgerton, who played Uncle Owen, is very keen on returning. We could see them. That would make total sense. It would make sense. I mean, whether or not we need to see them, I don't know if we need to, but it would be nice. Now, there's a lot of characters that we could see. I mean, okay, maybe Ahsoka. You know, but I mean, we got to be careful here, because if we got all these characters finding Obi-Wan on Tatooine, it's like, well, so much for him hiding out on Tatooine. You know? Everybody knows where to look for him. Unless, of course, he wants those people to come and find him. So, people like Ahsoka and various other people, maybe. But a big one, I think, that is highly likely is Qui-Gon Jinn. At the end of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda tells Obi-Wan that he's going to teach him how to commune with the spirit of Qui-Gon. This is further explained in Star Wars The Clone Wars. Qui-Gon had undergone some training to preserve his essence after death. Basically, he was on the path of learning how to become a Force ghost. He died before his training had been complete. Therefore, he was only able to manifest himself as a disembodied voice. At least at the time of about 20 years before A New Hope. It was his spirit who reached out to Yoda and brought Yoda on the path. And that's where Yoda was able to learn how to be a Force ghost. And I believe that Yoda teaching Obi-Wan how to commune with Qui-Gon, that Qui-Gon would be able to teach Obi-Wan how to become a Force ghost. Now, Yoda went on a specific journey to a specific planet. We don't really know if Obi-Wan has to make the same journey. Like physically make a journey. Maybe it's more a spiritual journey. Now, as I said, Qui-Gon could only manifest as a disembodied voice. But maybe in the years since, he has learned even more, maybe how to manifest his body. It's not out of the question. I think it would make a lot of sense. Now, I don't know if Liam Neeson is keen to come back, but it would be kind of cool. There's a lot of things that they could do that could be very interesting that are not out of the question or just shoehorning things in. As for what we're going to see in the story, could Obi-Wan be dealing with like crime bosses who are causing trouble and defending local townspeople in a very like Yojimbo, Seven Samurai style? You know, we don't really know what the story is going to involve, but I'm excited for what they're going to give us. And I'm open to what they're going to give us. And as for what to speculate about, well, since we have very little information, there isn't a lot really I can say. Other than to talk about who might or might not appear. I certainly don't want to be a killjoy when it comes to like Vader and Darth Maul, but as I said, some of these stories have already been told. And maybe it's just time to build new things. To expand the world, expand the universe. Create new things that could lead to further great stories. So those are my thoughts on these 3 new series. Let me know what you think. Are you excited for The Mandalorian? Are you excited for Disney Plus? Let me know. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you hear is my ventilator. And thank you for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.